The Red Army faction was a left-wing terrorist group operating in West Germany from the 1970s to the 1990s, with the height of their violence occurring during the 1977 German Autumn. The group consisted mostly of young West Germans who had a highly romanticized and privileged view of terrorism. The RAF orchestrated several bombings throughout West Germany during the early 1970s until its main leaders, Andreas Baader, Ulrike Meinhof, Gudrun Ensslin, Jan Karl Raspe, and Holger Meins were arrested in 1977. The five were held at Stamheim prison and put on trial for the next 5 years. Holger Meins died during a hunger strike in 1974, and Ulrike Meinhof committed suicide in her cell in 1976. The remaining leaders were sentenced to life imprisonment in April 1977. Soon after the sentencing, the RAF began a series of terrorist attacks in July against the German public, later known as the German Autumn. The group began by killing Bank President Jürgen Ponto after a failed kidnapping attempt. On September 5th, the RAF kidnapped Hans-Martin Schleyer, president of the German Employers Federation, and held him for ransom for the next 6 weeks. The RAF and the West German government were deadlocked until October 15, when a Palestinian commando hijacked a passenger plane demanding the release of the RAF prisoners. 2 days later, a German military unit raided the plane and freed the hostages. On October 18, the remaining RAF leaders in prison were found dead in their cells. The RAF killed Schleyer the next day, ending the German Autumn in the height of its public influence. After the German Autumn, scholarly work published on the Red Army faction tended to look more at the cultural impact and public memory of the group rather than its actual history. Two of the first works on the RAF were Gillian Becker's Hitler's Children, the story of the Baader-Meinhof terror escape, published in 1977, and Stefan Aust's Baader-Meinhof, the inside story of the RAF, first published in 1985. Both are criticized for their characterization and source credibility. Despite this, Aust's book is considered the definitive text on the RAF. After Aust, Jeremy Behrens' Bringing the War Home, The Weather Underground, the Red Army Faction, and Violence in the 60s and 70s is the most referenced scholarly work on the RAF in English. The 30th anniversary of the German Autumn in 2007 sparked a new wave of scholarly interest in the RAF in the field of gender and culture studies. In 2008, Baader-Meinhof Returns, a collection of essays by a variety of authors, was released. Though diverse, they are connected through a common theme of examining how popular culture remembers the German Autumn and the RAF. Later works were not so highly praised. J. Smith and André Moncourt's 2009 work, The Red Army Faction, A Documentary History, Volume 1, Projectiles for the People, was criticized for its strong leftist bias and praised for its multitude of RAF documents, many which were translated into English for the first time. As the RAF remained a current topic in the news, authors like Corinne Handschuh decided to examine the violent 1970s from the perspective of the West German government. She published Terror and Democracy in West Germany in 2012 as a reconstruction of the German debate over democracy's viability and defense in order to reveal continuities and shifts in political culture that have otherwise been obscured. Much of the recent scholarship on the RAF has been in the field of gender studies. Patricia Melzer used the RAF and the unusual number of women among its ranks to ask, can political violence be feminist? In her 2015 book, Death in the Shape of a Young Girl, Women's Political Violence in the Red Army Faction. In the same year, Charity Scribner published After the Red Army Faction, Gender, Culture, and Militancy as an examination of the role of gender in literary and artistic depictions of the RAF. Despite their low body count and lack of popularity, the Red Army Faction left a strong imprint in the public's consciousness. Following the 30th anniversary of the German Autumn, scholars began looking less at the history of the RAF and more at its media portrayal and long-term cultural impact. The Red Army Faction's impact lies not with its acts of terror, but in the public's memory and interpretation of the RAF in the German Autumn.